being willing to forgive yourself. I think people don't forgive themselves enough. They think that they have to be this perfect Adonis image of not just on a physical level, but just on what it means to live life and go through the standard pegs of life. We go to school, we get a good job, we do this, we do that. But why? Why do you do those things? And also, if you're not on that path, have you forgiven yourself? Because it doesn't matter. Yes, you should be doing something of meaning, but it doesn't mean you have to follow the same path that every person before you has. Maybe there is a better way to do it, because there's a lot of things in our society that we could choose to do better. And maybe it's our responsibility now not only to do them better for ourselves, but for the rest of our existence.
This is Way of the Artist with Brandon Colby Cook and Evan Schulte. Identifying your blocks and demystifying your struggles so that you can claim your own path and make your life a work of art. Welcome one and welcome all back to Way of the Artist podcast. Coming at you still from self-isolation amongst everybody, but we've got more guests, which has been really fantastic. Great opportunity to be doing that. And today we've got a fantastic guest. Not only is he a dear, dear, close personal friend, he was my best man at my wedding.
True.
And not that I'm just handing out favors to friends here, but Marco
mutual.
Yeah. Marco is a person worth listening to because he's got an incredible life experience, incredible pedigree and expertise. So let me just tell you a little bit about Marco. Marco Pasqua is an award-winning entrepreneur, accessibility consultant, and inspirational speaker whose speaking topics are focused on his personal stories of overcoming obstacles and managing major life transitions. Throughout his life, Marco has been involved with a number of organizations as a spokesperson, helping to spread advocacy for persons with disabilities across Canada. He is a huge proponent of creating and maintaining authentic relationships, which he believes is a secret to his success. Marco, welcome back to the show.
Kind of, because I was a guest on the show before, but that was when you guys were the B&E podcast. So this is a whole new structure, a whole new format. But and last time we were actually in the same room together, so this is weird.
Yeah. That was. It's always nice when everyone can actually sort of sit together and have the round table. But you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Hey, this works, man. If anything, companies, movies, television shows have all proven that doing this whole format of recording through Zoom or other platforms is the way to go, and that it's possible. So we can even dive into that when it comes to remote work later on in the conversation. Yeah,
definitely. And actually, let's talk about that immediately. I know that you have been you've been doing a lot. You've been keeping quite busy, or busier than a lot of people have been managing to keep during this time. I know that you've been emceeing and giving talks and things like that. Like, how about you flesh out a little bit of the things that I've already said about you?
Sure.
As far as you're a speaker, you're an MC, you're an advocate for a number of different things.
Yeah.
What is the driving force behind all of these things?
The driving force is never being satisfied with the status quo. I think your audience who's listening, they wouldn't be able to tell by hearing me, but I have a disability and I use a manual wheelchair to get around most of the time. And so when I started and built my business, I already had what some would consider traditional cards stacked against me, because not only did I have to create a successful business for myself, but also do that with the labels that society throws on us, especially if you're a person with a disability. So I knew that both that would be my advantage, and that could also be a downfall in the eyes of some people. But in the context of our current pandemic, I had to really pivot quickly because, like many small business owners, I've been running my business now for almost 9 years. And like many small business owners, especially ones that speak on public stages and do a lot of traveling across the country, that stopped immediately with these travel bans and various things of this nature. So 95% of my work that I do was immediately stopped, and presentations that I had set out and were literally banking on financially wise, were done, and they weren't going to be transferred over. So, but I had to be crafty. And so a number of what I do is to do with things like this, podcasts, webinars, speaking about opening eyes and shifting perspectives for people when it comes to the capabilities of people with disabilities, but also how to make our world more inclusive and universally accessible for all people. And my whole driver behind all of this is literally to change the narrative, because I don't know about you, but I don't watch the news. I actually despise the mainstream news. And anytime I have flicked on something, it's been a negative take on what we're going on, and that we should all be living in fear. And oh my goodness, if we don't get a vaccine, we're in trouble. Whereas I'm like, I can't be the only one talking about the fact that there are actually some positive benefits to this. And actually it falls right into my wheelhouse as far as the types of subject matter that I like to speak about as a presenter and as a speaker. So that has actually been good. And I'm a huge believer in manifestation. In our first show that we did together on the B&E podcast, we talked about the cube principle. That's my method for manifestation: creatively utilize your best energy. But whatever you want to call it, I think that the more that you think and believe something, that's the more that you're going to get back, especially as an artist, especially as a business person. You are going to be what you think about the most. And I knew that it was important, it was vital for me to not get myself in a negative headspace going into all of this, when it'd be so easy to give into all of those things.
Yeah, I think that everything is always out there. There's always the opportunity to look at the negative. There's always the opportunity to look at the positive, and it's always all happening. But sure, it's all about how you just choose to see it. I mean, there's an experiment they do. I don't know if you ever seen it, where they say, okay, watch this video and see how many times everyone passes the ball back and forth, and keep count. And people will focus on this ball pass, and they won't notice that there's a guy in an 8 costume walking by in the background, and that they changed the entire background as a backdrop, and they miss all these things because they're so minutely focused on counting the passes, right? Wow. But life is like that. What you focus on is what you'll experience, and what you like kind of tune out from, you won't. And I think like negative focus is one of those things. You'll see it as much as you look for it, and positive is you'll see as much as you look for it. And it's all there. The platter is all there to take from. But it sounds a lot like a lot of what you've done is really choose your focus and choose where you're going to put your intention.
And that's not to say that I'm impenetrable. I want to make it clear. I've struggled with mental health and anxiety challenges my whole life. And so I always say this in interviews and things, that it makes me feel a little bit like a fraud, like I have imposter syndrome, which is a real thing, for a lot of people, whereas you just can't figure out how you're getting these accolades or how you're being invited to these events and things, because you feel like you're just sharing your story, but particularly when you struggle with mental health yourself. But then I've realized over the years that actually it makes me more of an authoritative figure, because I've literally walked the trenches of what it's like to go through that headspace. And I know what's worked for me to help pull people out of situations of writer's block, of conversations of self-worth, of things of this nature. And I actually think that it makes me more powerful and more able and capable to support somebody through dramatic change. And so I actually encourage and embrace the negative thoughts that sometimes can pop in as a way of providing fuel to push me forward and to really find the lesson. As I often say, there is no win and lose, there's win and learn. You're never losing if you're always having the opportunity to be open to learning something in the experience. So
yeah, one of my old acting mentors, he used to have a thing like in the classroom that he would say, which is like, when we win, we win, and when we lose, we win. It's kind of like a similar type of thing, because there was no actual losing ultimately at the end of all of it, right?
Yeah, I think you just have to be open to it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you said in just that last statement there, that we could dive into any number of things. I mean, the imposter syndrome is one that I think is a very strong one, especially for people who are artists, creatives, anyone. If you're a person who has to put yourself out there at any capacity in the public eye, or whether that's, you manage a business and you have employees and you have to address them, or if you're giving online seminars or you're doing public talking, whatever it is, I think that's something that lots of people, you have to come up with that, because when you have eyes on you, questions of self-worth are somewhat bound to come up no matter what.
Yeah. And I think I know you would say that's your ego, kind of fighting against you as well, right? I think people don't like to face their demons, so to speak. And but it's important to do that, though, because it reminds you what your purpose is. Why are we even doing? Why do I wake up in the morning and decide that this is what I want to do for my life? There has to be a drive. There has to be a meaning. There has to be some purpose, some driver that pushes you to say that this is what you want to do to get it to make an income, but more importantly, to make an impact.
Yeah. I think for everybody, there's kind of stages in our way, right, as we go along. And at first it's like, I like this, I want to do more of it, and I want to explore that. And then it's like, well, maybe I could make a living at that. Maybe I could get some return for this thing that I'm passionate about. But I think, like, really the next stage is about what's the service, what's the thing that this is going to do for other people. Yeah. Because if you think about a gift, or you think about, like, you can have passion, but passion will fizzle if it doesn't actually start to, spread seed. Like, if it doesn't start to give out something, because I think what ends up happening is, like, you can only go so far fulfilling yourself before you need to do something else to fulfill yourself.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, to have a business for 9 years, as you've said, like that, you have to get to a point. I just think you have to get to a point where you begin to make it more about service than about making a living.
Oh, 100%. If this was just about money, I could have sold myself out a long time ago and be making a lot more money. But actually, both of you know this, and I want to make this clear to the audience as well. I've also equally known Brandon for probably 15 years as well. And you guys have watched the development of this business, because I've known you for longer than I've been running this business, and how there has been innately a struggle, like any new business starting up. And you ask yourself the questions as you're building something new or creative, is what is your driving purpose, as we've been saying, but also what are you willing to do or not do to get yourself to what some would consider the pinnacle of success. Some would label it as you're just financially successful and you're making in big checks. If I wanted to make big money, I could have sold myself out a long time ago and sell books and a bunch of crap that I know people don't need at the back of a room when I'm presenting on stage, just to make extra income. And I'm not saying that all books that are sold at events are garbage and people don't need them. That's not true. But there are people who exploit this industry, especially the industry of self-help and motivation, for their own gain. And you guys know that I'm a huge believer also in service to others. And it's why I do the volunteerism that I do. And it's why I do the various other things that I do for charities and sit on like a couple of boards and things like this, is because I want to, Brandon, do what you're saying, which is continue to find new ways to give people hope and give people inspiration in ways that they didn't even think they were searching for. Mm-hmm. I think that is what makes somebody truly a strong creative or a person who wants to give back to others, is that you're constantly searching for new methodologies, new mediums in which you can be an expert message delivery vessel. Because at the end of the day, as a presenter, it shouldn't be about your ego. It should be about the fact that you are just a vessel to deliver a message. That's all that there is to it. And if you can put your own spin on that lesson or that story that you really found impactful for yourself personally, maybe someone else can gain something special from your experiences in finding their own way through a certain path.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier on, Marco. It's somewhat related to what you just said, which is that you're talking a little bit about like your anxiety and like the mental health things that you've struggled with. And, I've struggled with similar things myself. And, sometimes these things come in waves. And I find that very often in our culture, it's like these things of like when we're struggling, it's something that we're sort of trained to just push that away or neglect it, ignore it. And you mentioned sort of like what you do with like story changing the narrative of using that thing as something to help fuel your message to other people. And what was that sort of discovery, that transition like in realizing that your struggle could be something that's inspirational?
Yeah, well, okay, so let me preface that with the fact that especially when you're a speaker with a disability in the industry of speakers, you want to be careful about it coming across as what they call inspiration porn. But I want to be clear about what that means for me, okay? Because there's an important aspect to this here, okay? Is you'll see posters or things out there with somebody with an amputee with no legs, but they've got prosthetics on, and it says the only disability in the world is a bad attitude, and something like that. As you're seeing this person with no legs, and people go, well, isn't that inspirational that this person's out there going and getting their morning coffee and they're not asking for somebody to do that for them and things like this. So I always wanted to make it very clear that I'm not inspiring because I can do the things that we expect normal society to do. I want to be inspired by who I am as a person and not by what I do because of my circumstance. And I think that it's important to reframe that for a lot of people, is that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. I actually think that is that Alan Watts that said that? Or it's one of the philosophers I know that you follow, Evan. That seems so familiar. I don't know if it was Alan Watts. I mean, he's said some familiar things like that. I actually think that, I actually think that that's Tony Robbins, to be honest with you. Do you really? Okay.
I think
that's
Tony
actually
Robbins.
A great example then, because here's the thing. Tony is a guy that's been in the industry for a long, long time, but I don't like that extra cheese-mo stuff. Okay, you can find the power within, the giant within, as Tony would say. And I think that that's really great. And his methodologies really do speak to a particular demographic and time and era in that industry. What I wanted to do was completely flip this industry on its head and be a different kind of guy that was naturally inspirational to people just because I bring that energy every single time, and that it has nothing to do with my disability or my chair. So back to your original question around the anxiety and those pieces and how you can reframe. Honestly, it's not always easy. Man, that if I didn't have Karen, my wife, in my corner, I think that it would be a lot more difficult, especially in times of isolation. Like if we didn't have our respective partners or at least friends that we could call to or call on to help pull us out of these situations, it wouldn't be as easy. I mean, you and Brandon also have each other as a way of, as an additional sounding board for each other as well during these times. And I respect both of you so greatly and our friendships that I know that it's a little bit of a cheat because I'm never actually alone in the situation. I know that if I wanted to bite the bullet and I really felt like I needed a sounding board, I could call either of you and say, like, I'm going through some shit right now. And, to go back to that imposter syndrome thing, I actually think that finding your own motivation, and it's actually why I call myself an inspirational speaker and not a motivational speaker like many people do, because everyone is motivated by different things. Okay. It could be money, it could be fame, it could be helping others. But inspiration, that's the spark. Inspiration is the spark. So my goal is to inspire you to find what motivates you, if that makes sense. And I have to remind myself of that when I go through these times of anxiety and depression, that there's a bigger picture here. So life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. And whether or not we're passively on a Disneyland ride where the track is fixed and we just have to observe it's a small world as we're being pulled through a tunnel, or whether or not we can literally pull a lever and change the track to go down different, it's kind of irrelevant. Because the real lesson is, are you paying attention? Are you actually taking note and pausing to see all of the different facets of the ride as you're going through it? Because you might have taken that ride 100 times by now, but it's the 101st time where you took a look over in the corner and saw that there was a little figurine that you never noticed before. And what can you take away from actually seeing that at the 101st time? I honestly, I love using analogies, Evan, so that's why I went into an analogy. But honestly, the truth is that it's about observation. And if you keep repeating the same mistakes in your life, you're going to get the same lessons popping up over and over again. And people who get into those remuneration cycles of, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep going through all these shitty situations? It's because you haven't paused. It's because you haven't taken the time to say, what do I actually need to learn? Because I guarantee you, the times I've actually paused and say, why does this anxiety-inducing moment keep happening? And then try to work my way through it mentally and emotionally, all of a sudden, that scenario stops happening. And yes, I'm presented with a new lesson, and you never stop learning, but I'm presented with something new and different. And so that tells me there's a gamification to the world that we live in, and it's incredible. The more that people realize that you can use life to your advantage and you can get the things that you want by helping other people, it's an incredible journey, man. It's awesome.
Well, I personally went through a period of depression. I went through, I like to think of it more as an existential crisis, because although you might say like, oh, I was depressed, I was down, I was whatever. But when I was in that place, the world was so small and it felt so lonely. And I felt like disconnected from everybody, and I felt disconnected from the world, and nothing really made sense. And it was hard to everything seemed like chaos. And what I started to find while I was in that stage was that eventually, when things are chaos, I would start to put things together. So I was like, well, you can't live in chaos. You have to make meaning. You have to start to put a story together. And I was starting to see the story that I was telling myself about, even the story of chaos, Mm-hmm. And so then I decided that I was like, well, I'm going to author the story that, and so what I think is interesting, what I learned from that was that there's something animating me. Like there's something beyond me in this life that's animating me. Mm-hmm. And what does that thing have a calling for? What does that thing push me towards? And then, it's such an interesting thing to pull yourself out of you want to call it a mental health thing. It's like, my mental health is like not good. I don't like it. Right. And then to pull yourself into a place where you're really in a good place. It's like, I think when you're in it, you don't feel like you can get out of it. But I think what would be interesting, Marco, is maybe you could share how it was for you, like how you go through that anxiety or that those feelings you're going through, and like what helps you kind of redirect and reanimate yourself in a sense that makes you come alive, just the way you're speaking right now. Obviously you're connected, right? But there is clearly times where you haven't been. So what's the difference? What's the change? What do you do?
For myself, I can say personally, like, there's just a moment where I say, get over yourself, honestly, because I feel like, for me at least, I can recognize when it's been a pity party. And look, it's okay to kind of sit in that and to feel like those raw emotions, because I think sometimes when we're going through those states, you're never going to get as raw of an emotion as you are when you're being real with yourself and kind of coming up against these walls. But eventually, after, because I'm a guy that can't sit still with the thoughts that are going on in my head, which is why traditional meditation doesn't work for me, which is why I use mantras. So that's a great transition, actually, because mantra-based meditations or transcendental meditations, I believe it's called, is the thing that works for me to kind of calm my thoughts, to slow myself down, to get myself recentered, and to remind myself that by sitting there and saying that my world is so small and that oh, woe is me, and I could sit there and beat myself up about having 13 surgeries and having a disability and I don't walk so well and blah 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 blah. But honestly, what is that doing? How is that helping other people? How is that helping me? Mm-hmm. And I think that those reminders of what is this going to do to help me grow, and if the answer is nothing, well, then maybe I should take what I can out of that orange, squeeze that orange for as much as it's worth, and then move on to the next piece. And how I get more out of the situation is literally then taking those more meaningful pauses of doing mantra-based meditations, doing planks on the ground, going and doing some form of working out, which I got to tell you, being in lockdown here has been really challenging for me because I had gone through a state of not being happy with who I was in the mirror anymore on a physical aspect too, because I have an athletic background and I used to be in really good shape. And I used to believe that I was just always this person, this athletic person. And then as I was looking at myself in the mirror, which led to a lot of these bouts of depression and not seeing the person that I saw myself to be, it was a really tough wake-up call. And so I started working with a personal trainer again and getting back into competitive shape, but not to compete, but just to feel like me again. And that in combination with intermittent fasting, they say a healthy body is a healthy mind, and it's absolutely true. It's that it's not just about the work you're doing inside your mind and outside on your body. It's actually in combination with both of those things. And believe it or not, those, and I'm sure you both can relate. There are times where you don't want to go to the gym and you're like, this fucking sucks. I do not want to do this. But as you're getting into it, you're like, actually, this feels great. And by the end of the workout, you're like, if I didn't get past that initial hump of not wanting to do this, I never would feel as amazing as I feel right now. So that in combination of intermittent fasting not only was helping to repair my body and bring it back to the person that I remember myself being, but I didn't even realize that the side effect to that was it was also simultaneously repairing my mind.
Right.
And that was a really cool thing.
Yeah, there's a quote or something I came across the other day, and it was really good. It really landed with me, but it was, who are you? You're the thing that changes yourself. You're the thing. You're so like when you think of who you are, you're the thing that made you who you are. You're not even you. You're that decision. You're that thing that's behind the puppet, in a sense, making it kind of, and it makes sense to me that you would feel a lot better because, I mean, material results in the world do count. They do make us feel certain things in the physical realm, but like that thing that actually made us go out and get it, that's the true reward. And I think like, I personally, I think that we're kind of in a time where people are beginning to go like, okay, it's not the car that I got that made me happy. It's my ability to be the kind of person that went out to get the car. You know what I mean? Like It was my ability to be the kind of person that was willing to change myself to figure out how to do it, to make it happen. Just like you did with your body. It's that's the real, like, I think the real connection to self, right?
I'll tell people a little secret is that I constantly talk to my higher self. I know that there is an idealistic version of myself, however you want to picture it. I picture it as them looking literally down on me from the ethos, from whatever that means, of that ideal version of what I look like physically, what I feel like emotionally. And when I know that because I have a bit of a temper, because maybe it's the fiery Italian in me. I don't know what it is, but when people do things that are wrong, I get fired up. And it's the same thing that motivates me when I'm on a stage. But when I feel like I'm not processing the information the way that I could or the most calmly, I literally have been known to look up and out loud say, I'm working on it, man. I'm working on it. All right. Like, I know that wasn't the best move. I'm trying here. You're trying my patience, but I hear the lesson. I will actually sound out that I understand that I'm trying to teach myself something right now in that moment, that the universe is trying to teach me something. And I'll literally just say, and you can do this too at home if you want to. It works, man. Is literally just saying, I get it. I understand it. And I'm sorry that I reacted that way. Next time I will do better. And it doesn't matter if you say this to yourself 50, 75, 100 times. As long as you're cognizant that you are going to try to do better next time, then ultimately you will. And I'm a big believer in quantum physics and the idea of multiple universes. And every decision we make brings us down a new path. And the cool and exciting thing about that is that means that every single branch of your decision-making tree is never undone. There's always a new path in which you can take. So if you don't like the path that you're currently on, if you don't like the direction the branch is growing, make a different decision and watch and shock yourself as you thought you were predetermined, but you realized that predetermination only led you to the thought that you had to bring you down that new path, right? And so it's incredible. Obviously, it can work into a circle. We can get into like Inception here, but at the end of the day, there's always an opportunity to make a better change. And I think that echoes with what we're doing in the world right now with this pandemic, and not always buying into this or that, but using your discernment even in your own life and in your own lessons to say, where do you want to go next?
Well, this is such a pertinent topic. Really what this whole podcast, what this whole show is about, it's like Way of the Artist. It's about creatively living your life, treating your life with an element of creativity and artistry, creating a work of art out of your life. And so much of it, of what that is, the more conversations we have, the more I'm convinced that it's there's not one solution. There's not, everybody has their own path they're on. And the best way for you to figure out what that is to start paying attention to your life. Yes. Start paying attention to the things that the fire that you have in you. Start paying attention to, what life seems to be asking of you. Start paying attention to everything that's going on. And then there's no blueprint for how you're supposed to live your life, because you're creating it, from moment to moment to moment to moment.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly how I found my success. When I was on the show and we talked a lot more about the Q principle before on the D&E podcast, it was like people kept coming up to me and asking me, how are you meeting these people? How are you doing these things you're doing in your life? And literally, it comes down to, I was just paying attention and I was just understanding where I needed to place myself next, or who I needed to support to next, and knowing that my network is so much more powerful than me as one individual. Knowing the strengths that you, Evan, that you, Brandon, bring to a table that I don't bring, but maybe you could help me to get to that next stepping stone of whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish or whatever it is I'm trying to get to. Step outside of yourself. Know that your network of people don't have to be non-playable characters in your life. They don't. Okay. Oftentimes we float through life and people don't realize, if this was a video game, we call those NPCs, people that, passively that you would never interact with or spend time with. But every single person has a role to play in your life. And if you empower people to play a strong role, one that can build you up and help you to uncover things under rocks that you never bothered to pick up before, you might be surprised with what you might find. And before I came on the show today, Evan, when you were at my place a while back, we were talking about how, my process for getting on stage, and how every single time, even though I've given hundreds of presentations, I still get butterflies in my stomach. And that's a good thing. Okay, as an artist, as somebody who does what you love, if you're following your passion, never, ever lose that feeling, because if you lose that feeling, you've lost why it matters. There has to be meaning behind what you do. And those butterflies are a reminder of the meaning. So I never want to stop feeling butterflies in my life. with what I do because it means I actually give a shit about what I'm delivering. Right.
I do want to let everyone know we kept a very social distance
Of course.
in this meeting.
I didn't say when this happened. This was, this was a while back.
But no, it's so like Marco, you like as you mentioned, like you do a lot of presentations, you give a lot of talks and speeches, and I'm sure some of the content and the messaging that you're giving, some of it is probably familiar as it goes on, but I would imagine that you would still have to be creating new things, like to keep for one, just because, as time changes, life changes, the world changes. I mean, there's no greater evidence of that than the time we're in now.
Yeah.
And these things are all things that have to be acknowledged, that we have to bring into our communication. But like, it's every single time whenever you have to create something new, there's oftentimes a lot of resistance that comes with it. How do you continue to create new things to deliver to people over and over and over and over again? Where do you find your well to do that?
Well, actually, I think I may have brought this up on the B&E podcast when you had me on last time, but literally, systematically, one of the things I did when I started out as a speaker, and this is not, I don't want to take credit for this, is something that my speaker mentor told me at the time, but he told me to create a chart of my life up to that point, which at that time was 2012, was the current date. And he said, I want you to create a chart that has an experience. Basically, I did it as an Excel chart. Okay. So I had columns of my experience, my emotion, and how it made me feel. Okay. And the date on the leftmost side. And literally like a chronological chart, I said 1985, Marco was born. I'm born 3 months premature. How did this make me feel? And I had drop-down menus because that's how nerdy I am, of like, I was sad, I was happy, I was whatever. What did you learn from that emotion or feeling? And anyways, I went through and I did every single point of the timeline up to 2012 of really impactful or emotional things that I had experienced up to that point. And people don't realize that every single one of those experiences is a story that you can bust wide open for a particular audience or a particular circumstance. So when a client approaches me and says, look, my team is having struggling with leadership, finding courage, finding their drive, I literally have an actual Rolodex of stories that I can pull from to say, what stories do I feel best match that? And then it reminds me, oh yeah, that memory I haven't really spent a lot of time with lately, that's when I can delve into deeper and find the purpose behind what it is that client is looking for. So every presentation I give is custom tailored to what the client is looking for, but I 100% want to make this clear. They are 1,000% authentic stories of real things that have happened to me, because if they didn't actually happen to me, or I don't have some sort of personal connection with them, I feel like that goes against who I am and my brand as an individual and my brand as a person. That I want to tell you real stories, not hypothetical stories that you just think sound nice. And, they are real things that have happened to me. And that's the sense of vulnerability. I think more artists need to respect and understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. And in fact, the more vulnerable you are with an audience, the more that they'll connect with you and the story that you're trying to present. And that it's not about them connecting with that personal story of mine because I went through it, but the aha moment I look for, and I've literally seen people's jaw drops when I'm on stage, is that, it was the person had that moment with their grandfather or their uncle or their mother or father that was very similar to what I talked about. And that one little throwaway piece of the story that I thought was meaningless, to me, but that one little element of the story meant something to someone else. And that's the power of making the stories fresh and unique and current, is that you're always going to feed off of the energy of the people who are watching and observing and taking in those stories, because they're ultimately going to put a little bit of themselves as a layer on top of what it is that you're disseminating to the audience. And that's what makes it special. And that's what gets me up every single day, is knowing that that someone is gonna have an impactful moment. Even if it's an audience of 1,000 and only one person has that moment, I guarantee you that person will come running up to me once I get off stage and say, "Thank you." It was when you were talking about that moment where you felt abandoned and you wheeled really quickly towards the bus, but you missed the bus, and you missed that bus, and it was just a bus. But to me, I remember the moment when I was caught in the rain and I missed the bus, and if I didn't miss that bus, I never would have met my significant other, because you know who pulled up to me at the bus stop 5 seconds later? Is the person I'm married to today. You see? And like, those are things I can't make up. Those are things that happen to real people. And it was meant to happen, that I stuttered or I stopped or I deviated from the way I normally tell the stories 50 times over. I decided to say it a little bit differently today. And because I did that, it opened up a whole world of possibilities for someone else.
So that's how you met your wife, huh? You missed the bus?
I missed the bus. No, not for Karen, not for me. No, Karen and I met actually because of I couldn't cancel the event I was trying to cancel. And that was the event that I met her at. And it wasn't a speaking event. We were both volunteers at a cross-country thing. And anyways, I do look at that as kismet as well, because I tried to get out of that event and I couldn't get through. The line was busy. And the irony thing about that is I talked to the organizers at the time saying I was trying to pull out of the event. And they said, well, the day that you're mentioning you're calling, nobody was on the phone that day. So it's weird that it was busy. So how about that for Unsolved Mysteries? Okay? How about that?
Well, I mean, I wanted to take that kind of line of thinking for a moment and just kind of venture down that, because when things don't work out the way that you want them to work out, or the way that you're planning, or the way that you think they should, that can also be what creates the opportunity for what is truly incredible, And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. They think, well, everything went wrong, it didn't work out. And then they take the position of being the loser or being the victim or being the whatever, right? And I think that deep inside all of us, we know we don't want to be losers. We don't want to be victims. We don't want to be, we don't want to be people who are just like powerless. But I think in those moments when things don't work out the way that you want them to work out, that's when you want to remain open. That's when you want to be there and be like, okay, this didn't happen the way I thought it would. So what's supposed to happen here? Like if it was meant to be this way, you know what I mean? Like, and you can look at this in all sorts of ways. When things go wrong, you can be a champion of that moment, and incredible things can occur that sometimes would never occur if you weren't open to the thing not happening the way you wanted it to happen.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that's, again, about observation and paying attention. Although I want to make it clear, I don't want to be the asshole in every situation, being like, when someone tells you they're having a shitty day and it's like, but I was supposed to do this. And you don't want to be the guy that goes, but were you though? Were you? Are you really? Aren't you really on the path you're supposed to be on? Because that's not helpful to anyone when they're in a state of being frustrated, right? It's being empathetic. I think people have lost empathy over the years. At least a lot of people have, because they've been forced to become self-focused, because that's the way we're programmed to be through a lot of our programming and our TV, music, movies, all these things, about if you don't drive for self, no one else is going to look out for you. And that's just a complete misnomer. You can find yourself by helping others and giving service to others. It doesn't have to just be about me. So taking those moments to be a shoulder for a friend and helping them to sort through the dirt that is shitty situations and say, what can we discover together through this? Not doing it in a placating way, but saying to them, well, okay, let's dissect your day for a second. Okay, so you woke up, you literally rolled off the wrong side of the bed, you stubbed your toe, all your water was cold, there was no water pressure when you're having a shower, you hit every single red light, but what else happened? Oh, well, because you hit every single red light, it means that you were 5 minutes late to the meeting that you were in. But then it sparked an interesting conversation with the person that you were supposed to meet with. And then you guys delved into this or that or the next thing. And you realize that there are hidden gems behind every single thing that you think were not meant to be and were not meant to happen. And I try to remind myself that every day, especially the days where I'm really feeling in the dumps. And, it's not always successful, but then you remind yourself that you're human, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay to live in that for a minute, to understand your humanity.
Yeah, man, there's again so much stuff that we can go in there. The one little thing I just wanted to share, which was, and I don't remember, it might have been Dan Millman who said this, but it was like one of these things like a lack of compassion for others is usually attributed to a lack of compassion for yourself.
Boom.
Like when you, like being able to not have empathy for others. But oh my God.
It's a lot, I know. Yeah.
No. There was something else in there that I was just like, oh, that was so good. And we can take a little trek down that road. But now it's
well, you're thinking about that, Evan. I want to throw in one thing. I want to throw in something, and I just want to hear Marco's response to this. But I heard a quote the other day. I love this one. It's like, what if you treated yourself like someone you loved? You know what I mean? Because I actually don't think a lot of people treat themselves like someone they really love. Like they don't, because when you love, like when you fully are like and truthfully love, not like you're trying to get something out of somebody. Like people love themselves like, I'm going to use you to get something. They don't love themselves like, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to make sure you're considered. I'm going to make sure that I'm kind to you. You know what? They talk to themselves like you're an idiot, and they do things that are not loving at all.
No.
But I mean, I just think like we could take the whole conversation we've been having up to this point, and that this quote kept coming back in my head. It's like, well, what if you treated yourself like someone you loved? How would you deal with these situations? How would you respond? How would you be? You know what I mean? And
I think I would be a lot kinder to myself, to be honest, because even though I'm saying these things as though I'm an expert in this, I'm not an expert in this, because I'm only an expert in my own life and my own experiences. So could I use to love myself more? Absolutely. But to your point, Brandon, I think everyone could use to love themselves a little bit more. It's kind of like that whole thing of the golden rule, treat others how you would like to be treated. But I think people forget, would you speak to your mother that way? Would you speak to your significant other that way? I hope you wouldn't. If you would, then maybe there's another conversation that needs to happen. But at the end of the day, finding those pieces and actually being willing to forgive yourself. I think people don't forgive themselves enough. They think that they have to be this perfect Adonis image of not just on a physical level, but just on what it means to live life and go through the standard pegs of life. We go to school, we get a good job, we do this, we do that. But why? Why do you do those things? And also, if you're not on that path, have you forgiven yourself? Because it doesn't matter. Yes, you should be doing something of meaning, but it doesn't mean you have to follow the same path that every person before you has. Maybe there is a better way to do it, because there's a lot of things in our society that we could choose to do better. And maybe it's our responsibility now not only to do them better for ourselves, but for the rest of our existence and everyone else around us. Because guess what, guys? We're the leaders of the world going forward. We're now of the age where we were like, those are old people, those are adults. That's what their job is to do, to run this planet. Guess what? We are those people now. So it's up to us to actually change things, because we don't have to do them this way, because that's the way it's always been done. And the same thing goes for your own self-worth, self-love, loving of others, bringing more positivity in the world, not buying into the fear of all of the messaging of, yes, we're in this together, and that's great, but we don't have to buy into the fear of, you need to make sure that you're, social distancing is so important, because we walk a very thin line between distancing and tyranny. And I want to make sure that is clear. I do not want to live in a society that is run by tyrants that are literally dictating every single move we have to make, because that is the opposite side of love. I want people to remember that, because if we forget what love is and what connection really is, then we could easily give up our rights and our freedoms as human beings to other people who tell us that this is how we need to socially interact. And I'm getting fired up right now because it's to do with what's going on in our world today. But it frustrates me, because I feel like there are days where the messaging behind being separate means that you're safe is winning. And I don't necessarily think that in every circumstance that is true. Remember that human connection matters.
I mean, that goes across the board with life, regardless of what's going on right now. Like, safety is important, but it's like, you know, if you want something in your life, if there's something that matters to you, you got to be willing to put your ass on the line. You know, you got to be willing to put yourself out there, and that requires risk, and you know, it requires courage, and you know, and love is courage. You know, I think that's something that people need to realize, because there's, you know, they say a coward dies 1,000 deaths before they die, right? The courageous man but one, you know, and a courageous woman but one. It's like there is a certain point where we have to decide, you know, and I think we need to do it with grace, but like, there needs to be courage in this world. You know, if everybody just starts like playing it safe, playing it small, minimizing themselves, you know, we lose as humanity, right? Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's a line, right? You walk that line where it's like, I'm going to be courageous, but you know, I think of the warrior, right? The warrior is there to protect. They're not there to like, I'm going to do this thing to destroy. I mean, you could come at life that way, but I think when you're like going at life and you're being the warrior, you think about what you're protecting, you know, and you think about, you know, you're putting your life on the line to protect something you believe in. And I think that is part of the fire that's coming out of you. You know, you're being a warrior. You're saying like, no, this is not right. Tyranny is not right. But at the same time, you know, like we're protecting something is important, a value, an ethic, whatever that might be that you're, you know, maybe we haven't clearly defined yet, but I get it. No, I just think that's a way to put it, to look at it, you know? Everyone should have that same fire and passion to fight for themselves. Fight for the future that you want for yourself, regardless of what we're going through in the world today. Fight for what you think is right. Fight for your ethics, for your morals, for your values. If what you have to say is completely oppositional to what the mass population is saying, so be it. That is freedom of thought. That is freedom of speech. That is freedom of rights and understanding. As long as you're not hurting anybody, and you're not bringing someone else down in this world, then I think that you have every single right to believe what you are and believe who you are and what you can do to impact and help other people, you know. And I just, it frustrates me when we get into conversations where it's you're automatically wrong because it's not the mass opinion, it's not the popular vote of what everyone else is saying. And that is not a conversation, my friend. That is not a debate, you know. Everyone brings their own perspective, and you have to protect those rights and freedoms. And you should fight for them, and you should get passionate about it, because no one should ever. I don't want to live in a world where we all become automatons, where we're all just kind of, you know, going through the motions of we become the artificial intelligence. That to me is not a world that I want to live in. I want a world where we live symbiotically with technology and with other people, but in a way where we still are free to have our thoughts in the way that they matter the most. And that is to help ourselves and to help others. Well, it's kind of the message of the show in a lot of ways, you know, is like the way of the artist. It's your own creative way of going about this. I mean, there's many different ways to climb the mountain. And if we say that you have to climb the mountain this way, then that's tyranny, right? Yeah. Like tyranny. That, you know, the thing is like, we can all be headed to the same destination. Yep. But we don't all have to go the same way. Some of us will go by land, some by sea, some by air, some by underground. It doesn't matter. I might take an elevator. Exactly. But if we look at someone else and they're going about it a certain way, or they're going a certain path, or maybe that path isn't as well tread, it's like not looking at them and saying, well, you're doing it wrong. You know, because just because this path is well worn, just because many people are walking it, doesn't mean it's the right way. You know, it doesn't mean that it's the way to go. And I think that, you know, what you're bringing up for me, Marco, is being a critical thinker about our lives and about the way that we're moving forward in our lives. All of us, you know, everybody included. Yeah. I actually attribute, you know, you both
are people who have helped me to pull myself out of situations of feeling down in the dirt myself. And so I want to take a moment of gratitude and appreciation that I have both of you in my life, because I think people don't take that time to pause and actually, people say like, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How's your day? Oh, it's great. But these are such reflexed lines that we say to ourselves every day that it's like, do you actually believe that? So to pause and to say that we appreciate the individuals and the people and the emotions that brought us to say that. So to both of you, I want to say thank you, because you have helped me out through so many tough situations, and you may not even have realized it. It's not like we had like a sit down and I said, okay, here's my crisis moment right now. Oh, thanks, you pulled me out of it. Maybe I was just having a simple conversation with you over a coffee, and you didn't realize that aha moment you just gave me helped me to move on and help me to forgive myself. So thank you for that. And knowing that there is always 1,000 different ways that we could do it. And how exciting is it that we could learn from someone else that there was a different way to do something that potentially was better for us, right?
Yeah.
So,
so much of this conversation that we've had from the beginning to where we are now, Marco, based on like what you do in the world, what you try to talk to people about, I'm seeing this theme of, it's about finding the universal in the specific. It's about finding the underlying humanity and the connection that brings everybody together. It's about going past these things that we see on the surface. It's about going past these limiting beliefs, going past the things that keep us small, things like fear, and getting to the truth and the heart of who we all are and what we all share together.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, you've said it to me in the past before, when you've had epiphanies and things, but it's true. I'm going to say it, Evan, it's all love. It's all love, man. It's all love. And Brandon, I know I've heard you say it before too, man. And like people might look at that as the surface level. Well, what the hell is he talking about? It's all love. Yeah. Literally, it's all love. This illusion that we live in, that we are separate beings, is an illusion. And no, I'm not on any kind of drugs right now. I'm not on any kind of assistance right now. It's an illusion. The vibrations that we have that make up the falsity that is a physical form is just part of the game. And that's okay. The fact that you, Brandon, you, Evan, are living different perspectives of the same world, that you see, smell, colors differently, all these things, it's incredible, because when we realize that if I hurt you, I'm ultimately hurting myself, that is being one with oneself. And that is understanding that we are the culmination of everyone's thoughts, streams, and emotions. So if you're not happy with the world you're living in, if you live in a neighborhood where things are not happy, remember that person across the street, as hard as it may seem, is a reflection of yourself. So can we help that person change? Maybe, but maybe it's not their job to change. Maybe it's their job to be, so that you can recognize what they are in that moment and pull out of that what you want to be in that moment as well. And know that we all play a part. It's a circus, but we play a part. And it's incredible to play that part, because boy, oh boy, do we have opportunities to make things better by realizing that we're only a small part of a much bigger picture, and that we're all universally one being just trying to figure this thing out. If people don't already have that emotion when they think about the fact that we're on a floating rock in space, I don't know how else to tell you that there's something bigger happening here, and people need to remember that. So the next time you want to put somebody on blast, remember that you're putting yourself on blast.
Well, I mean, it's true. And I think that it's all love is such a difficult thing to comprehend until you've made certain, transformational jumps in your own life. And it's fine. I think there's certain comments, there's certain wisdoms that get shared, right? And people can't hear them. They sound too woo-woo. They sound too crazy. They sound too out there. But I think when I was younger, I was much more like that. I was like, what? If someone said it's all love, I'd be like, what? Like, whatever. Like, that doesn't mean anything to me.
Go back
like,
to the country, you hippie.
Yeah, exactly. Your granola cruncher, anyway, it's a joke there. But anyway, so the thing is that I did a lot of work on myself. I made a lot of growth. I made a lot of change and connected a lot more. And I began to see how much more that's true. And I think that there's certain wisdoms, there's certain concepts, certain ideas that you can hear, like we're all one and we're all connected, that it's fine. Like if in this moment you're hearing us talk about this on this podcast and you'll get it, you might not resonate with that. That might not make sense to you. And I think that's fine. I don't think you need to be like, you don't need to reject it or take it or do anything. You'll get there when you get there, or you won't. It doesn't matter. But like, I think that we can see that there is a connection between all of us, undeniably, because if you have vengeance or spite towards someone else, the only poison that's giving is yourself. And if you recognize that you're trying to give that to someone else and it's only coming back at you, that's one of the first steps to realizing how connected we are. Because when you hate on somebody, what you're really doing is you're actually giving it back to yourself. So if that lands with you, then you could see how theoretically everything you give is just coming back to you. So you would start to go, well, it is all love, because I would give only love if I knew it was all coming back to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, if maybe that helps some people put it together. You know what I mean?
Hey, some people call it karma. Right. And some people might believe in karma, but they don't believe in a higher power, whatever. Okay. But if you believe in karma, then you believe that, what it's basically like sending out it's like a messenger pigeon. Okay. You send something out there and you'll get it back, or a boomerang is probably a better example. Okay. You send something out there and you'll get it back. So literally when this first happened with this pandemic, and I was concerned about work, and I said to myself, oh, geez, I haven't really pushed myself to be doing a lot of online webinars. Can I really do that? And I said to myself, okay, I need more webinars. I actually do need more webinars. I need to be pushing myself to pivot very quickly, and also open up to the other aspect of my business, which is accessibility consulting. I want to touch on that for a second, because I actually avoided it like the plague, because I didn't want to be pigeonholed as the guy with a disability talking about disability related things, because I didn't want to be considered one note. But the second that I opened myself up to, okay, well, maybe there is something I can do with that online. Maybe I can review blueprints given my training for municipalities. And I shit you not 2 days later, I had somebody call me from the city of Coquitlam saying, hey, Marco, I used to work with you when you did some work with the city of Surrey in accessibility, and we're doing a new project, and there's no other accessibility consultant that I could see myself working with but you. And even though we're living in a time of social isolation, I'd love for you to review our blueprints to be able to do these things. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, because I said yes, because I said I want these things, because I said I'm not avoiding these things, I was getting these requests in droves, to the point where now my business has settled and I'm able to start, seeing the full picture and understand that they work in conjunction with one another. And yes, the motivational aspect is there, but I can also motivate people and open their eyes about things to do with accessibility. And once I say yes to that, that's a whole new stream of revenue that, yes, one aspect of my business got cut off, but maybe there's a new way to do these things. And it's the same thing with the way we have emotions and feelings towards other people. The second that you say yes, the universe does not have a conscience, okay? So it doesn't care if you say, if you're living in thoughts of, this is really shitty, all I keep getting is people doing mean things to me, you're likely going to get more of those things happening, because it's a reverb system. So the more you say it out, the more it's going to come back to you. And finally, when I said yes, is when these opportunities came to be. And people can do that. They need to realize you can empower yourself in your own life to manifest whatever you need. And I'm not saying that we're all magic genies and all of a sudden you want a Lambo and a Lambo is going to land in front of your house. It comes down to intention. If you have the purest of intention with the things that you're setting out there in the world, the universe will repay you with those things occurring. But it has to come down to, you're not just trying to serve yourself. And the reason I know this is because I've tested it, okay? On the times where I was just when I was really in my head, or maybe there were times where I was human and I got a little bit of an ego. And I didn't get those things back to me tenfold. But the second that I decided to say, I'm not going to put a lot of thought into this, I'm just going to say that if I was given this opportunity to help other people, oh boy, would I do these amazing things with it. And I kid you not, a phone call, an email, a something will happen to let that happen. But it was because I was driven by the right intentions.
I just have to say this. I agree with you in intention and having your mind in the right spot. And I really believe in vision, and vision's like one of the main messages that I share in my coaching. But like, one of the things that I always try to impart on people is that intention requires action. If you want any material thing to happen in the world, like, you can have all the feelings you want inside, you can build an incredible universe inside yourself. But if you want to manifest anything in the material world, it takes some form of action. And the way I see it is like this. I have a vision, and when I have vision, I have clarity. And then through clarity, opportunity comes. It's my responsibility to act on that opportunity. If I don't act on that, there's no expecting the universe to like give it back, because it's just not enough to be like, I thought about it. But yeah, it's like, but you have to plant the seeds of action. And you have to let go of the fact that one action or 10 actions might not get you it, but it's that 11th action. It's that 12th action. And it's going to come when you don't expect it, because those actions were seeds that you planted in your vision to create new opportunity that you could act on later. But like, if we expect things too immediately, we can start to believe, oh, that's not real. Of course,
it's not happening. It's not happening. But that's actually what I've said in our last interview on the B&E podcast. I mentioned that is that the book, The Secret, or the movie, The Secret. Oh, that's really great. It's about intention. But the thing that they miss, Brandon, just what you're saying, is the action part of the story. Yeah. That is the most crucial. That is the bridge between intention and manifestation and realization. Yeah.
It was like the
action.
It was like, I always think of The Secret as being like the fast food version of
it is.
Like all the intention. It's like it doesn't have any of the
nutrients.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can scarf down that big cheeseburger, but you're not going to feel so good later on. Let me tell you.
Yeah,
the things that are inside. Yeah, take the action.
I also wanted to say too, is also like with the whole thing of expectation too, is that sometimes it comes back to you in a way that you didn't expect.
Right.
You get it, but you have to, again, it comes to that thing of attention, of being like, oh, this isn't exactly how I expected it, but this is actually what I asked for.
Yep.
There's those experiences that come with it too. And if you're not paying attention, sometimes people miss it and get disheartened because like, oh, I didn't really get it. It's like, actually you did get it, because sometimes I've had like you were saying before, it's like, the person who misses, their bus, and then and it seemed like such a bad thing, but then that was the way that they met like the love of their life, a scenario like that. Sometimes we ask for things, and then if we're not open and willing, because sometimes I think that life gives us back things. Sometimes it knows better than we do. In fact, I often think it knows better than we do. And it's just like, no, you're asking for this. It's not really what you want. I'm going to give you this instead. Right. Yeah. But it is actually what you want.
It is.
Have you had any sort of experiences that you could like that?
Oh, geez. Man. Well, I'll tell you.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. It's a good one. It's a really, really good one. A perfect example is that I didn't go to school to be a motivational speaker. Okay, like and the story, Evan, but it's a huge story in my life because I lost my job in the recession, much like a time that we're facing today with the pandemic. In 2010, I lost my job, and I was devastated because I thought to myself, I'm so screwed right now because I went to school for video game design. It's all I know. And as a guy with a disability, like I can't go get a construction job. I can't go flip burgers at a McDonald's because it's unsafe and in the eyes of these managers. And I thought I am so screwed. But through that was the kick in the butt I needed to start this very business because I never would have quit. My wife, as you know her very well, she said to me, "You're not a quitter," and you never would have quit. You would have kept going through doing 18-hour shifts and working long overtimes just because you felt like that was the path you were supposed to be on. But I'm so thrilled that you lost your job now because now you can be in the pursuit of true happiness, which is I think, inspiring other people. So she was the biggest cheerleader in my life at that time, during a time of almost like a pandemic. It was the recession, and we all thought we were in the dumps at that time. You think to yourself, that is the worst time ever to lose a job. But for me, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I could probably name umpteen other times as well. Different surgeries that I feel got botched. I've had 13 surgeries. My last one was the most crucial. I had both my legs broken and the bones turned. And yes, my legs are straight now, but because I was in a cast for 2 months straight, all that muscle atrophy made it so that I had to learn how to walk again, all over again at the age of 13, right during the peak of my growth as a teen, as a young teen and growing. And man, could that start to screw with your inner thoughts of, holy shit, I have to start all over. And I haven't quite been the same since then on a physical level, but that's okay, because I still am the person that I am today as a result of everything else that has happened. And I think that's the important part, is to remember to pull out the things that matter most. And to your point earlier, Brandon, is taking the actions that mean that you'll work towards that ultimate goal, that end piece. And knowing that it's bite-sized. We don't have to, you might have this big ambitious goal of having a multi-million-dollar business, but what are the smaller steps along the way that you can take? And know that if you break those things down step by step, that it seems way easier to digest than just saying, okay, multi-million, I want 6-figure salary, 7-figure salary. Yeah, but what do you need to do before that? And if you break those things down, then you can pat yourself on the back every single day to say, well, now I've finally, finished my business plan. And now I have a go-to-market plan. And I'm working with marketing experts that are going to help me to push my message out there and to get the things out. Those are all pieces towards that ultimate goal of getting that 6-7-figure salary, if that's a driver for you. So I want people to remember that, because we're not saying that gaining material success has to be a bad thing, because you have to live in the world that we have constructed around us. Okay, so that can be a good thing. But ultimately, what are the core drivers behind that success that is going to ultimately help you to live a better life, whatever that looks like? And
that's a Pandora's box, because that opens up everything. Because are you doing things just to try to feel like you're enough? Are you doing these things to make yourself that's not a good reason to go get material success, right? That's a toxic reason. Yeah. But if you're doing it because if I get more, I can give more and I can express more and do all this stuff and I can bring more out of me, that might be a more healthy reason, right? And I think when it comes to material success, I'm for it. Go ahead. Yeah. Get the luxuries and wonderful things of the world, but do it. But find a place that's healthy, to come from, not a place of toxicity or scarcity or something that actually weakens you and destroys you or destroys things around you.
Can I touch on that for 2 seconds? I know that we're probably running over, but I want to talk to you about that to you personally, Brandon, because when I first met you, you were more, I'll just say it, of that lifestyle, because I think at that time you were feeling like that was the method and that was the path in which you were supposed to take, was the material success. And I'm so proud of you, man, because the amount of emotional growth, I'm being real right now, the amount of emotional growth
I agree.
I have seen you take over the past 15 years is incredible, man. And so what was that, not to turn the interview around on you, but what was that like for you to realize that you didn't need all of those bells and whistles? Like, you didn't need all of those things to find the happiness.
Well, I think it goes back to being a kid, man. It's just like being neglected a lot, no one being around. And, I had 2 older brothers and they were off doing their own thing. And I was the kid brother, is like, a lot younger than them, that they had to take care of. Right. And my parents were busy working, doing their thing, having their right. And, I think for me, I started to believe that I needed to do really important things to get noticed, to matter, to feel like I was enough. So a lot of my early years, a lot of my 20s were really just about trying to do something to basically get attention, to get love, to feel like I mattered, because, I just didn't. And I think, like, for me, in certain ways, I say I went through my existential crisis. That was kind of the peak. Like, that was the peak moment of that worldview being destroyed. And it was painful because it's like it's an identity crisis. You built your whole life around thinking that if I do these things, that all matter. And the weird thing is the world rewards you for it. You get things that actually make you feel like that's working. Like, when you put yourself into a position where people want to work with you or be with you, they start to give you the things that you're looking for. And it's like a drug. But the problem is that if they take it away or it goes away, you're left with nothing. Right. Yeah. And I think what happened for me is that, you're like a gambler. You're like putting the bet down and you're putting the bet down, and then you put all your chips down and then you lose and you got nothing. And when you got nothing to offer, you go, well, like, am I nothing? And then I started to realize that I'm not that. I'm the thing that creates that. I'm the thing that actually, and that was the transition for me, but it was painful. I have to say it was very difficult. It was very uncomfortable, but yeah, like I'm glad that I was able to transform through it, because what I was living looked good and felt good at times, but it was kind of hell, because deep down, I never felt good enough when I was doing that. And no matter what I did, and there was always kind of an emptiness. And as much as I became good at covering that hole inside myself, it just was a constant game of trying to keep up with it, And it was always there.
Man, it was a rebirth for you.
It was a rebirth. It really truly was
a rebirth for you. I witnessed it as you were going through it. Evan, you witnessed it very closely as well as a partner of Brandon's and through this whole experience. And I know also, Evan, not that we're making this into a session, a therapy session or anything, but I know that you too have gone through. In fact, I'm so proud of you because you recently wrote a blog post on your website about some of those realizations for yourself on a personal level too. And so if we're diving into Brandon, we might as well dive into you, I think too. Because what was that like for you to finally have the courage to come out and talk about that as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was me addressing just the level. It was me coming to an awareness of the level of anxiety and fear that I lived with, and how long I'd been living with that. But not only that, but there's also a whole lot of shame that often comes with that. And for myself, I was living with a lot of it because, as people, and I think, not that all people don't go through this, but I think there's definitely something that exists a lot within male culture, which is that, that's not okay for you to have that. It means that you're out of control. You don't have your shit together, all of this sort of stuff. And so the more secret it was just the more power it had. And so it was just time to come out with it and just tell anyone and everyone who wanted to read it and to listen to know this about me. But it's for me, it displays to me and everything that we're sort of just talking about in this section here is, there's an insight, there's a wisdom that has been passed along since like the beginning of humanity, since like the moment that the lights went on and we were like, what? I am here. What is this? Yeah. But there's been this pattern of sort of death and rebirth. And, by the time that we actually face our actual sort of physical death, that we've actually died many times. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's what this is like. That's kind of like the wisdom of these things. It's like, no, we die many, many times. We die to the person that we were before. We die to the beliefs that we had before. We die to, the ideologies, all of these things. They are a death, and they are challenging and they are difficult, but they always lead to a rebirth into something that is better. We're more clear, we are wiser, we are more truly authentically the people that we feel ourselves to be. Yeah. And then we go and we do it all over again. Yeah. Pema Chodron, she's an incredible Buddhist monk and writer. And I read from one of her books, she said, awakening is the continual annihilation until only that which is true remains.
Mm.
And there's just something about it's like this continual annihilation. And that's sort of, it's that death thing. It's like we continually annihilate ourselves. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like, I think that the wisdom comes from learning to move with that cycle and be a part of that process consciously instead of resisting it. Yeah. And not that it necessarily makes it more comfortable, but there's it takes a somewhat of a different quality, and it's hard to necessarily say what that is. But just the awareness of sometimes that that's what's going on is it provides a kind of comfort, I guess.
Well, and the fact that like all three of us right now, we're willing to be completely vulnerable and to share those realizations with the audience and with ourselves. I think that speaks to who we are and to our growth and to our evolution, because I honestly don't know 10 years, 15 years from before this, if we would have been able to come to those types of conversations and felt like it was okay, as you said earlier, because of the constructs we've been trained to believe that we live in. But I think that the more that you're willing to put your guard down and open yourself up to having those conversations, that is true growth. And people are going to be naysayers and they're going to be combative, and they may not necessarily agree with what you're saying. And it may be a struggle to pull someone to their own realizations, but to know that it's not necessarily our responsibility to drag someone through those realizations. It's to be a supporting system for them to come to them themselves. It's like parents who try to teach their kids all what's right and wrong, when really you have to give your kids the space to make those mistakes themselves. And the same thing comes with epiphanies and realizations. Give your friends, give your family the space that they need to come to the same conclusions, even if you feel like it will be best for them to come to that decision now. They're in their own space, they're in their own time, and we have to respect that.
Yeah. Well, we've like, this has been a great conversation, but we're probably at around that time to start wrapping this one up. Mark, I don't know if you had a drink. I've been having a bit of a beer here.
I didn't today, and it's the only podcast where I haven't had a drink. I
had a mint tea before I got on, but as you know, I'm still intermittent fasting. I can eat now. So I will be having a delicious French toast breakfast with my wife when I get off the call with you guys.
Nice.
And then, but I will cheers emotionally.
Yeah, I will.
I had a fancy coffee, Evan. I had a fancy coffee today.
Perfect. It's whatever drink.
It's just a drink, but
just a drink. Well, I was drinking just a straight up Pilsner from Steamworks.
Oh, beautiful. I love their Pilsner.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time. Nice and easy. Didn't have too much because it's like, well, I haven't. Yeah. I do the intermittent fasting thing too.
Yeah.
And I hadn't had anything to eat yet before we jumped on here. So I'm like, had a few sips. It was good. So
crazy. You want to start, Evan? We have a treat.
Yeah. We'll start. And I just also want to mention before I jump into these questions here, that Marco, your words coming into this, or the laws that we have on the show: authenticity, intention, and story / meaning. Man, like those themes permeated this conversation everywhere.
I love it.
So, all right.
And a few other words too. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course. Yeah. Okay. So Marco, we've got some, just sort of like some rapid fire questions for you, but you don't have to answer them necessarily rapid fire, but like we're just going to throw some stuff at you.
Go into as much detail as you want, or as little.
Yeah. And just don't think about the answer. I'm assuming just go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the most important book you've ever read or listened to?
Yeah. Because I do a lot more listening than I do. But to be honest, I'm going to go back to this one because it's really established me as an entrepreneur, and that's the E-Myth by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth,
love that book.
E-Myth Revisited is like honestly about not just working on your business or in your business, but a combination of the both. And it changed the way I looked at business. So I love that book. Also, Michael J. Fox's autobiography is amazing. And on the audiobook, he does the reading himself, which is incredible.
Nice.
Nice. So what film has had the greatest impact on you?
Holy cow. Oh man, that's a tough one. Oh man, okay. Back to the Future. It's behind me right now. But honestly, Back to the Future, probably because of that idea that we control our own destiny. Literally is stuck with me my whole life. I have a flux capacitor tattooed on my left arm. So that's how much I believe in controlling my future.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. What is a song that completely takes you somewhere?
Oh man, I don't know. There's so many emotional songs that really, really get me. And that I love hip hop, but as far as like taking me somewhere, a lot of Coldplay's early stuff really takes me a little bit on an emotional journey. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man, like there is such good music out there. So I don't know if I can nail down one particular song. A lot of even Whitney Houston's work early in her career and things, and some of those early 1950s, 60s singers and crooners, basically a combination of things between 1960s, 50s, and 60s crooners, all the Rat Pack, all the people that you can imagine, all the way up to Eminem and people of today, but for completely different reasons. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Where do you think creativity comes from?
It comes from your core, from what makes you, the essence of you, the light within you, I think is where creativity comes from. I think that sometimes we're assisted from a great beyond, whatever that means, when it comes to some of our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. But I think it comes down to the way in which we've gone through life and the lessons that we've learned, and what makes you the core of who you are as a person is ultimately what drives people's creative thoughts and freedoms.
Sweet. Where or how do you find inspiration?
Everywhere. Everywhere, from every single corner, from conversations like this, and from people that I love and I care about. I'm inspired by you guys every day. I'm inspired by people I've looked up to my whole life, guys like Rick Hansen, things like this. I'm inspired by programs on TV and things that make us think. Basically, every single facet of life, you can find inspiration.
Okay, so what is the one thing you would tell your childhood self?
It's going to get really great. You might be beating yourself up now and thinking that things are really hard and tough, but it's through those hard and tough times that you're going to discover the best elements of yourself. And as token as that may seem for some people, it's so true. It's so true that through the hard times, you find the best parts of yourself. I actually welcome the challenge. We've talked about this before, but people ask what the driver is for life. The driver for life is death. Because if we remove death, if we didn't have to think, if we didn't feel like we were on a finite amount of time and time was running out, I don't think we would be as driven to accomplish the things that we do. So knowing that there's an end date, but we don't know what that date is, I think is a massive driver. It's a driver for me because I know that if I were to die tomorrow, I want to be proud to say, like, even if I was hit by a bus tomorrow, I want to be able to say that, man, in the time that I was here, I made an impact, and that you guys thought that I was a decent dude. Like, honestly, if that was your eulogy, I would live with that. That would be good. He was a decent dude.
Yeah.
I want to throw one more thing in here. This just came to me. This is normally our last question, but the last one is normally our last question. Bonus question.
Sweet.
What is one thing your future self in 20, 30 years would tell to you right now?
Woo! My future self would tell me in 20, 30 years to myself right now, you followed your purpose. You followed your purpose. I've always felt that there's a unique reason why I'm supposed to be here. In fact, there's a unique reason why I was born with a disability. I've questioned it. I've teeter-tottered it. I've gone back and forth on it. Does it mean something? Doesn't it mean something? But I've always said to myself that there is a purpose. There is a meaning. There's a reason why I have to look at the world through this perspective. And whether or not people out there believe in past lives or reincarnation or things like this or soul lessons or anything like this, is that I truly think that I had the capability of being a completely different person had I not been born with a disability. And I know that I'm on the right path because it just feels so. So to hear from myself 30 years from now that I followed my purpose would help me realize that I didn't fall off my own track. And that's important to me. It's important to me that I stayed true like an arrow to the bullseye. And I just kept going for it. So as simple as that is, it's true.
Nice.
Amazing. Nice. Well, any final thoughts for anybody on this one?
I don't know, man. This has been amazing. And it's funny because these existential kind of conversations and sort of looking inside yourself are stuff that we normally have on a weekly basis, Evan, anyways, when we have our weekly check-ins and chats and things like this. But to have this with you guys in this medium has meant a lot to me. And if anyone wants to learn more about what I do, they're welcome to check out my website. If you Google my name, Marco Pasqua, you'll find me. But if you go to marcopasqua.com, you can learn a little bit more about my backstory, about what I do and how I help people. And that's it from me. But I'd love to hear final thoughts from both of you.
Yeah, I definitely, like, to our audience out there, like, definitely go and check out Marco, because I mean, it's just, obviously this conversation has opened up a lot of things and people get to hear a little bit from you and how you think. But, for me, this opened up a lot. And you asked that question of, kind of making that observation of my growth and my change over time. And, I wrote something this morning, and I do this exercise. I write something every day about a little wisdom that I had acquired through life and through this journey. And I figured maybe I'd share this because it was so relevant to the things you were talking about, and just, I don't know. I'm going to share it.
Yeah, please share it.
So this was my insight. It's this. It's not about you getting better. You are already enough. It's about you bringing out the true you from hiding. This is your unmasking of the ego, revealing yourself authentically, connecting to your passion and your gift while building the confidence to share it with the world. This is you recognizing the impact of your existence and realizing why it is important to free from the constraints of your complacency.
Boom. That is incredible, dude.
That's what I wrote this morning. And, it's so funny, man. It's like I really believe, like, when you find your people, your tribe, the people that you really are on your journey with, they all kind of talk about and share the same things, because somehow we're all interconnected on that kind of thing. Right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there's us and we all know each other well, but then there's our whole audience, and there's all these people that we haven't necessarily connected with personally on a personal level, but I would imagine that a lot of them out there are sharing that same idea. And, like, I think about that question, like, what would I tell my childhood self? I would say something along the lines of, like, you're already enough. Like, this is just about figuring out what that thing is underneath all the things you think you had to be. And when you commented on that and said, you used to be this way, I was like, yeah, that was my mask, man. That was my, and I've watched you go through your journey, and and I think about you losing your job and then you finding your way into this business, and that job was keeping you weak. Right. Yeah. And you were attached to it and you were scared to let go of it. But when you got somehow when the death of that was the birth of this and this conversation, which is so important. And I think if I'm going to leave anybody with anything, I would say, like, let the thing die, man. Let that thing burn off. Yeah. Let it go, because it might be keeping you weak and it might be holding you back, and it might be the ego that's hiding you from you. So that's the thing that I'm really taking away from this. And I'm really going to I'm actually going to go for a walk, go for a run, and I'm going to think about those concepts that you shared. Because awesome, for me, that's really, it reminds me more and more. It's like, yeah, this is an unraveling, an unveiling to myself.
Yeah.
And each of us, I believe, we're all going through an unveiling of ourselves if we're willing,
Yeah.
we want that.
You have to tell yourself that you're willing to start.
Yeah.
Right. Evan, any final words from you?
No,
man?
I'm not gonna try and follow that. So
that's awesome.
It's all been said.
But thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, man.
I know I'm not a traditional artist in the sense of some of the artists or people in the industry that you're used to having on the show. But I appreciate that you value my voice and you value my message enough to hopefully resonate with your audience. So I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Much gratitude to both of you for giving me a stage and a platform to share my message.
Well, Marco, I think that you are a tremendous example and illustration to how expansive the title of artist actually and truly is. So thank you for joining us and giving us your time.
No problem, man. All right. We'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you got something out of this, if you feel it improved your life or your journey in any way, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share the episode.
You can also support us on Patreon, where we have tons of great bonuses. You are the ones that make the show possible and help us to thrive. Thank you for joining us.